Hello Casiopians and welcome to Digital Casio. Today we are going to be restoring a J-52, a jogging or walking watch from 1988. Unfortunately the module and LCD are completely shot, so thankfully this J-50 from 1984 has the same module. So I'm going to be transplanting the module from this watch into the J-52. So I know what you're thinking, restore the J-50. Well, I could do that, but they're pretty common, and to be honest, I've got a thing for this J-52. So I'm going to start by removing this aftermarket band. It's a bit of a tight fit in there, but I use this pin remover to undo the pins and remove both halves. There's one. And finally, the second one is coming. Here it goes. So the LCD on this J-52 has screen bleed on it. It's obviously been dropped because it's partially functional, whereas this J-50 I haven't tested. So let's remove the back and try a new battery in it. So we'll pry up the back from the middle here and remove it. Everything seems to look pretty good off the bat here. The seal is intact, and we'll remove this plastic membrane, and I'll use a pin to remove this old battery. And to remove the battery, I push down, use the pin to knock that lever out, and that releases the clip and the battery. Now it's quite possible this is the original battery, so hopefully there's no corrosion. But we'll put in a new energizer and see what happens. Okay, we'll put the retaining clip back in. And the moment of truth. Well, it's doing something, but it looks like it needs an AC reset. So using a pair of tweezers, we need to touch the contact in the AC. You can see here that there's an AC and an arrow pointing to the hole. So we'll touch the tweezers in there and the back of the battery for about 2 seconds, and we are good. So now we need to make sure that it has sound, so let's replace the case back. Well, thankfully it has sound. So let's try out the pace. Yep, perfect. Okay, so remove the module for cleaning. So once again, remove the battery and we'll get this module out. Okay, it all came out in one. Great. Okay, we'll put this to one side and we'll start on this module. So the first thing that has to come off is the metal frame on the back, and for this we'll use a small flathead screwdriver to release these clips. So release these two. And then move it to the side, and we've got one clip on the side here. Another two on this side. And then another clip under here. No, there isn't one. Oh, the clip is on the inside. So we use that pin again just to release that. Like so. So let's turn this over and we'll need to release the LCD clamps. One side has these two clips. Came off fairly easy. Move that to one side. And then the bottom clamp is held on with these two tiny screws. This one needs just a little bit more work to come off. We also have this power spring. I can't pick that up. Let's put that away. Come on. There we go. And then remove the bottom clamp. So with those clips removed, we should be able to separate the circuit board from the plastic housing. Yep, comes apart easy enough. And I am going to leave the LCD in place because the zebra strips are actually stuck to the LCD. So let's leave them as is. So let's just remove the circuit board from the bottom case. Thankfully, the circuit board has no corrosion, so all we have to do is just apply a bit of IPA and clean it up a little bit and put it back together. So the contacts here have to be 100% clean. You get any dust or dirt in there and you'll start losing segments on the LCD. So let's just give the zebra strips a bit of a wipe down with the IPA. So let's bring the first half of the case back in. We still have the springs in place. We have two springs for the front buttons and one for the alarm. Now to put this back in place, we'll just flip it back. So we try and line up everything and flip and place it in. Get a slight click as it goes into place. So let's put on the LCD module. So you're going to make sure that the LCD clicks into place, but don't press too hard or you might damage the LCD. With the LCD in place, let's put the LCD clamps back in. And I'll start with the top one to clip it in. Okay, that's in place. Let's just check, make sure those are actually clipped onto the little notches. And they are. So let's put on the bottom clamp. So we're going to make sure it's the right way round. And we just place it in where it's going to go. Make sure the holes line up. And then we insert our screws into the inner holes. we'll just tighten these screws until they're snug, making sure that we don't over tighten and damage the threads or the module. Okay, so let's flip this over, and we've got to put that power spring back in, and that one goes in here. So this is a connector that gives power to the front of the module. So let's put the metal frame back in and make sure that all our clips are going to line up properly. So once it's in place, we just push down and lock those clips into place. And for the final time, we'll put the battery back in. And we'll perform an AC reset. Okay, it's running, so we'll just give this LCD a little bit of a cleanup and we'll put it to one side. So let's completely strip down the J-52. So this case back is removed by applying the case back opener to the bottom right corner down here. Just push it in and twist, and out it comes. So this case is actually in really good condition, so it's not going to require too much work. So we'll remove the gasket from the case, and I use a pin to do this by just getting it right in the joint here. Yeah, this gasket is shot already. Yeah, it's not rubbery anymore, it's just like a plastic. So it's no good. So we'll take this off and we'll see what the one on the J50 looks like. Yeah, it's rigid. When your gasket is like this, then it's completely unsalvageable and only good for the trash. Okay, so with the J50 back, I will again use a pin, just get it right into the edge there and just ease it away from the edge. Just slide it around. Look at all this dirt and gunk. Now care should be taken when you're doing this, because you don't want to stretch the gasket or break it. These are very thin, but this one seems to be in pretty good condition. So this one still has some flex, so we will be able to use this. Just need to clean it up. So now we're going to remove the buttons, and to do this I'm going to use two flathead screwdrivers and try and remove the circlips by pushing on the edges. Sorry for the poor camera shot. This is a pretty tricky thing to do and to get a good angle as well. And you do have to be really careful because these things can ping across the room and they are tiny, so chances are you'll never see it again. So there's the other clip. These things have all kinds of hairs on them. Get off. And then we'll remove the clips from the front buttons. So remove the front buttons, and you see that we still have this little tiny washer in there, so we'll get that out. And then we'll just push out these other side buttons. So I have this little container, put these little tiny components in. Get in there. And now I'm going to replace these O-rings, these little tiny little O-rings around the edge. So we'll just pull that off there and we'll throw these away and put some new ones on. So with all these little tiny gaskets removed, let's get to washing. I'm just going to use warm soapy water, use regular dish soap, and we put in the case and we'll put in the buttons. And we'll give it a good scrub with a toothbrush. And we'll also do this gasket, being very careful not to ruin it. So just carefully try and remove the dirt from the edges. I was able to source a band, not the original, but it will do, it will fit. So let's wash this up. So once everything is washed and rinsed, then we just place it on a towel, as well as this gasket, and just press down just to get a lot of that moisture off, and then I'll let it air dry from here on. So this is a trick that I learnt from the Vintage Digital Watch channel about greasing up the band and the gasket. So I'll smother the band and the gasket with this marine grease, and I'll leave it overnight for it to all soak in, and this should preserve the life of these for a good long while. So after 24 hours we'll wipe off the excess and give these a really good wash. And once again we pat them dry and leave them to air dry. So with the band done, let's get on with the pushers. And with this I'm going to install some new O-rings. So with the pushers done, I'm now going to add a little tiny bit of silicone grease to the holes for the buttons. And just push that in there. Just get a little bit of silicone grease in there and then install the buttons. This adds protection for the water resistance and also reduces friction for the buttons. And do the same again for the front buttons with a little bit of silicone grease. So just reassemble these front buttons. So we put this little tiny spring on first, followed by this little tiny washer, and then just push it into the hole and into place. Now we'll just simply put on the little circlips or C-clips and just push these into place and lock them like so. And we'll do that for the other buttons too. So that completes the case. Now we'll work on the stainless steel back, and for this we're going to sandpaper.
Using 800 grit here just to get some of those deep scratches off. It will get quite shiny doing this, but we'll put the grain back in afterwards. And move on to 1500 grit, and yeah, we're getting a pretty good shine on that, and I think that's good enough. So we need to put the brush effect back in, and we're using Scotch-Brite pad and just give it an up-down motion. Keep it as straight as you possibly can, and this will put that brush effect back in. Now we'll just use the IPA to clean up the back from the excess metal dust. And then we'll dry it and buff it using a microfiber cloth. Lovely. Then finally, we'll just clean up the edges, make sure there's no dirt or grime built up around the edges here for later on when we install the gasket. So now I'm going to give the crystal a little bit of a polish. I'm not going to go overboard with this because the crystal kind of sits down kind of low, and I'll end up doing some damage to the case. So I'm just going to see what I can do with this. So for this I'm using an acrylic crystal polish, which you can buy pretty much anywhere. Polywatch is usually the most popular one, and I'm applying this using these cotton wool pads. So we'll just clean the inside with some IPA, and then we'll wipe off all moisture from this using, again, a cotton wool pad. And we'll also try and clean up this LCD, make sure there's no dust with this little pump thing. Just blow it off. And then push these buttons out and we'll install the module. Hopefully there's no dust inside. So reinstall the module, making sure that the metal frame of the module doesn't conflict with the buttons. Make sure it's pushed down fully. Okay, looks good. Now reinstall the gasket on the case back. Let's put the plastic insulator back in, and making sure that the spring actually goes through the hole at the bottom here, and it kind of clips into place. Now we'll put on the case back by just lining it up and pushing down and locking it in place. Now attach this replacement band with 90mm spring bars. So we've got to push the spring bar into the little loop there and then line it up with one of the holes. Now this one actually sits at a bit of an angle, so it makes it a little bit more awkward than normal. So let's put it in like that, and then with the other end sticking out, we'll use this spring bar tool to try and push that into place. Let's turn it around, use the right end. And no, yep, it's in. And we'll do the same for the other side. And that completes the restoration of a J-52. Thanks for watching.